Mike, let's talk a little bit about kind of where we are with the business right now. As I've just said, you've withdrawn guidance. I'm wondering from which portions of the business, which sectors within the business, the ambiguity is arising. Where do you have most visibility and where do you have least visibility?
Yeah, and thank you, Guy, and thank you, Vonnie, for having me on. First, let me take a moment just to say how much we appreciate and admire our heroic nurses, doctors, and first responders for all they're doing to fight COVID-19. And I could not be more proud of how our 96,000 employees around the world have stepped up to help lead in this fight and support those on the front line. So this is the priority, our focus, fighting in this pandemic. And we are also working to manage our business for our customers and shareholders as well. And so looking at where we are as we come into the second quarter, looking at the outlook, we did withdraw our guidance. There's too great of uncertainty, a very fast-changing environment. We did highlight some of the challenges that we're facing as we come into the quarter. Even as we came out of first quarter, we saw a deceleration in some of our end markets, both geographically as well as in key markets. We continue to see very strong demand in respirators, as an example, but we saw a slowdown in areas like elective procedures in healthcare. So our medical solutions business saw a sharp decline in our oral care business. We saw a slowdown in other areas like stationary and office supply as people are working from home. And that continues into Q2. We highlighted, while we withdrew guidance, we are going to provide monthly updates in our business, and we started that with just where are we April to date, and we are down mid-teens in organic growth globally, and that is true for the Americas and EMEA. Both are down in line with that, even a little stronger in the Americas as we come through the first several weeks in April. So that's really setting us up for that slowdown and some of the actions we're taking to manage against end market demand and manage our costs.
Mike, we're now getting to the point where a lot of economies, and the president in the United States is likely to talk about this a little bit later on, and we've just heard news from France that it's looking to reopen its economy as well. That process is now starting to get underway. Do we have the necessary PPE in place to allow this process to happen? What kind of visibility do you have about companies having the right PPE to bring their people back into offices and factories, about the kind of the availability of PPE for people to start going about their businesses as we start this process of reopening the economy? What can you tell us about what supplies look like and which areas look best prepared?
Yeah, and Guy, the story to this point has been ramping up production. We've seen unprecedented demand for PPE, and for us, the N95 respirators that are used by healthcare workers and first responders on the front line, and that demand outstrips our capacity to produce enough product. We've been ramping up. We brought our surge capacity online. Coming out of SARS, we invested in surge capacity to be ready for crises that come along and demand us to step up. COVID-19, the battle here is greater than anything we've ever seen, so we continue to add to that. We're going to take the U.S. capacity from 35 million a month to 50 million a month by June. We're going to take our worldwide capacity from 100 million and double it again as we get to the end of the year to be able to produce 200 million, almost 200 million respirators a month. And so for us, that's our focus right now. And the demand in the near term is greater than our ability to produce, but we are going to make the investments and as an industry, ramp up to be able to serve that as we go forward. So it is that phase, and reopening the economy will be the next kind of aspect of that. Something that we talk about, a lot in our company. How are we expecting to see that? I would say there's still a lot of uncertainty about how that's going to play out. I do know we are going to continue to work to double our output of N95s as we go through this year, though that's clear that demand's going to be there.
Well, you said on the call this morning, Mike, that you would never raise prices during a pandemic. Will you be able to keep your prices fixed, however? And, what about raw materials? What about the supply chain?
Yeah, it's really critical to the ability for us to supply the frontline healthcare workers and first responders. We have to manage our entire supply chain, back to raw materials, through our production and through supply and logistics as well. And I would say we've had very strong support from our suppliers on the raw materials. We haven't seen raw material price increases. Part of what we benefit from is some of the raw materials, some of the key raw materials are things that are not unrelated to oil and gas and the price of oil and gas. They're byproducts of refining oil and gas products. And so we're seeing that stable, and the outlook is we can manage that. And our investments in capital, that is part of our model, and we see our ability to continue to manage that and not raise prices. And we are committed to hold that line as we go through managing and fighting in this battle with COVID-19.
So you did show some expense control and cutting expenses even in the quarter. I'm curious, now that you've implemented a paid furlough program, do you anticipate at some point, even a couple of quarters out, needing to lay off people in order to keep up this expense control?
And Vonnie, I would say the uncertainty about what are we going to have to do in the next steps is just not clear at this point. We have been taking a step-by-step, a phase-by-phase set of actions because of the fast-changing dynamic we're facing, the uncertainty that we're facing. This is a different playbook. In past recessions, you might have a good model of how the recession will not only play out but recover, and you can take broader actions earlier. In this case, we are taking step by step. It's really a different playbook. So the next step has been paid furloughs. We've managed our costs. We're managing our production. We're in line with near term what we are seeing in demand from our customers, and we'll continue to adjust. We've put in place and launched a strong change in our enterprise operations, end-to-end manufacturing, supply chain, and customer operations at the beginning of this year. It's serving us well. It's helping us to adapt more quickly and more agile than ever before. So we'll continue to depend on that and take it step by step.
Mike, can I just circle back to the issue of reopening the economy? A lot of people are trying to figure out what happens with restaurants, what happens with theaters, what happens with amusement parks. As we try and reopen these parts of our economy, one of the things that's going to be really critical is figuring out how we purify the air, how we try and take some of the risk of going to some of these events out of the equation. What role does 3M play in that process? What can you do to help these customers make it possible that their customers want to come back and enjoy the services that they offer?
Yeah, and Guy, I would say we have been guided by three clear principles in the middle of COVID-19 and this pandemic. The first is focusing on the safety of our employees, and that will be true as we look at reopening the economy and returning to the workplace. The second is fighting the pandemic from every angle possible, and that's going to be a big role for us to play as we come back to the workplace, as we reopen the economies. And the third one is staying focused on our customers and delivering for our shareholders as well. So managing our businesses, and that's the way we think about it. And so looking at customers broader than not just our respirator customers, but a broader range of customers as well. So as we look at reopening, as we look at taking steps in that around the world, those principles are going to hold us in good stead. And then we're working broadly with governments, health officials, medical experts, other companies, customers, suppliers to really manage a step-by-step move through whatever reopenings we've had. We've done some of that. We've moved through a couple of phases in China already as we've come back to the workplace little by little there. And so it's something that those principles will keep us in good stead, I think. As
you reintroduce workers to offices, Mike, are you supplying them with 3M masks? How are you managing that? Do they get access to things like respirators from 3M? And have you spoken to the administration recently?
What was the last part, Vonnie? I'm sorry.
Just if you've had a conversation with the administration recently?
Yeah, and so we have, regarding workers, our worker safety, there's a number of things we're doing. We are right now working from home. About half our employees around the world are still working from home. That's part of the protocols that we have in place. And in our factories where we have workers serving these critical industries, we've implemented very rigorous and robust protocols around safe distancing, cleaning and disinfecting, PPE. All of those are part of those procedures. So it's something that it's an important part of each step in this and part of that focus on our employee safety. And we'll continue to look at look at those protocols step by step. And regarding the White House, we've been working very closely with the White House on what we've been talking about a lot, which is bringing more of our N95 respirators from some of our overseas production, primarily China. We've had a very close working relationship and partnership with the White House.
Yes.
I would say FEMA, FDA as well.
Mike.
It's been a really good effort, a team effort across that to be able to start to bring additional respirators into the U.S. market. So we work with them on a daily basis.